Let's talk about average aggregate inventory value. The average aggregate inventory value is the total average value of all the items held in inventory by a company. It tells us how much money you invested to build your inventory. At the same time, it tells us how much of your money is tied up in your inventory. So how can we compute this? For example, the AAIV of a company that holds items A and B in stock is the number of units of item A times the value of each unit of item A plus the number of units of item B times the value of each unit of item B. And notice that the number of units of item A can be changing over time. So in that case, you can just average them over time. So if you look at this graph, the x-axis is time and the y-axis is the inventory level, and this might change over time. Then we can just compute the average inventory level. So let's take a specific example. Suppose you recorded the number of item A on stock every day. On January 1st, you had 102 units. The following day, you had 86 units, and so on. So these numbers are changing over time. So how can we compute the average inventory level over time? We compute the average of these numbers. You add them up and divide it by the number of values in your data set. So that's how you compute the average inventory level, the inventory level averaged over time. So in general, you have multiple items in your inventory. Then you compute your AAIV as follows. You take the average inventory level of each item multiplied by the unit value of each item. And this value is how much you invested to produce each item, and you add them up over all items. So let's take an example. Suppose you keep raw materials, work in process, and finished goods inventory. You have 3 different parts in raw materials, and here is the average inventory level, and here are the unit value. So how can we compute the AAIV? First, how much money did you invest to build this inventory? 15,000 units, and to build each unit, you spent $3, so $45,000. For part 1, next, how much money did you spend to build this inventory? 2,500, and to build each unit, you spent $5. $12500. Then you keep doing this for the rest of the items, and then you add them up. Then you get AAIV, which is $360,500. So what does this quantity tell us? This quantity tells us how much money is invested to build your inventory. It tells us $360,500 is tied in inventory at any point in time. Let me ask you a question. Suppose company A has a higher AAIV than company B. Which one do you think runs its supply chain more efficiently? The answer is B, because a high AAIV means more money is tied up in inventory and the cost of holding inventory is higher, so it's less efficient. So far, we talked about AAIV, and what's the difference between AAIV and COGS? COGS represents the amount of money invested for the products that are sold in a given year, typically a year. And on the other hand, AAIV tells us how much money is tied up in inventory at any point in time. So let's take an example. Last year, a stationery store sold 1,000 pencils. Wholesale price was $2, and 2,000 notebooks, the wholesale price was $5. What's the COGS last year? So how much money did you spend to purchase 1,000 pencils from your supplier? 1,000 and $2 each, so that's $2,000. Next, how much money did you spend to purchase 2,000 notebooks from your supplier? $5 each, that's $10,000. So the total is $12,000, and that's how much money you spent to sell all the products last year. That's the COGS last year.